wonder if people ever discuss the Kennan Doctrine, the George Kennan Doctrine. Most people think of him in the Soviet Union, but his thesis was that we are, at that time, consuming roughly 6% of the world's resources. We are 6% of the world's population, but consuming roughly 40 to 50% of the world's resources, and therefore we must dominate the world so that we may continue our standard of living.
Well, yes, I think that is the basic thrust of the Compact for the New American Century that was the foundation for the Bush administration, that indeed we do consume. I didn't know it was up to 40, I would doubt it. About 25 is more the figure I've heard, but whatever it is, I mean, it's horrible.
This mine was back in Kennan.
That was under Kennan's. That would be in the late 50s, I guess. And 40% then, and it's gone down to 25, with the population of the world increasing enormously. It certainly, I mean, it was the foundation of what the Bush administration was all about. That, and if you look at that contract or compact for the New American Century, it said specifically the United States, in order to maintain our way of life, our level of living, we have to have more and more resources, and we have to find a way to get them. And the whole issue of Iraq was mentioned in that statement. The issue of Iran was mentioned in it. So, yes, it wasn't one of the things, I'll tell you, that new Foreign Service officers discussed. This sort of stuff is not what the political dynamics behind are not what your career junior officers are getting at all. They have to bring it into them. And when they try to raise these sorts of things in their embassies, they can be shut down very, very quickly. Like, that's not for us to decide. That's what the politicians are all about. We just implement their policies. And it really is amazing that we don't have more people that do resign. I will say that when I resigned, over 400 officers contacted me saying, "You're doing the right thing to resign." And about the equal number contacted the other two that resigned. But they said, we've got kids in college, we've got mortgages, we've got all this stuff, we've got to keep working, but we'll try to slow down the war. We'll try to figure out a way that it won't be as effective. But I think that they ended up retiring early because there was no way they could do that, tragically. Any other questions or comments? Please.
And I used to work for the State Department too, only I'm a whistleblower. And when I worked at the State Department, I had a relatively, what would consider non-controversial and should have been sort of a support job. I actually supplied representational supplies for residences of the ambassadors and high-level officials overseas. And one of the places, of course, we supplied these to all the residences, and one of the places, every so often we get a new one, and one was Afghanistan, because you helped reopen the embassy in Afghanistan. And when they reopened it, is it true that when they got there, all the things that were in the embassy had been maintained and left alone, and nobody bugged them or stole them or anything like that?
Yes, it's absolutely true. The small staff of Afghans who stayed on our payroll for the 12 years that the embassy was closed, and who fended off common criminals, fended off the Taliban somehow, it was unbelievable when we went back in there that the only thing that had damaged it had been some rockets that had hit the roof of it. But everything was as it was when the people left 12 years before.
Yeah. Yet, my program could not survive Hillary Clinton because, we wanted to do a glassware contract. And the normal way to do it is you have fair and open competition. Couldn't do that. We had to have a no-bid cooked contract. So that's why I'm here. It's not all bad. I mean, also, I was opposed to the war from the get-go, but
Yeah, I can remember so many afternoons when we would be out protesting in front of the White House, and here she would come from work, walking right down, protesting for a while, and then heading back to work. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is a comment primarily, and that is while we are bombing and starting wars, China, and not only China, has found other ways to get the resources that they're going after, for example, by buying huge quantities of farmland around the world, sub-Saharan Africa, etc. Minerals, oil, etc. And they're doing it, obviously it's unsavory, but at least it's not by the process of war, as of yet anyway. And I guess I should stop there. It's just my primary comment.
Well, it's a very interesting thing, your comment on that. It's also very interesting that they've purchased the debt of the United States. I mean, we are in debt to China. If they would ever stop exporting to the United States, if we gave them a reason to stop exporting, we are their biggest export recipients, but we would probably be naked in 6 months. I mean, if you think of all the things that are made in China, our whole lifestyle, I mean, we're protecting our lifestyle that's made in China, is really what it amounts to. But on the whole issue of China, as the Obama administration continues the rhetoric toward China, America has to have an enemy. We have to have one. It is impossible for U.S. foreign policy to work without an enemy. So now that Afghanistan's kind of here, Iraq's here, Iran still is one of the enemies, but now China pops up again, and why? I mean, we owe them all this money. They provide all the stuff we wear, but they decided they needed an aircraft carrier. The United States has had, 13 or 14 aircraft carriers for decades, and so here you have the largest land military in the world saying, well, we'd like to have a little aircraft carrier. And then all of a sudden, U.S. foreign policy goes ballistic. Those militaristic Chinese, they're coming after us. And one of the outflows of that was something I participated in just a month ago. In South Korea, there's a little island called Jeju Island. It's a little tropical island just south of the mainland of South Korea. And the United States has convinced the South Korean military-industrial complex to build on this beautiful little island that's never had a military base on it. And when you think of South Korea, how many military bases are there? My God, the whole place is littered with them. It's military bases everywhere, and yet they need one more. So I was there, and Bruce Gagnon has been there, and people going in solidarity with the villagers who are saying to their Navy, don't build this at our place. Don't build it on these, it's called the Peace Island, the island of peace, for God's sakes. The island of women, it's where the women that are the free divers, dive down for sea, whatever you eat down there that they dive for. But a beautiful place, and the naval base is to house destroyers that have the Aegis missile system on them, that Aegis missile system that's part of the U.S. missile defense program. So we've got websites that are set up and petitions you can sign, but it's one of the outgrowths. The South Koreans, on behalf of the Americans, say there needs to be a base closer to China. Well, if you look at the map, everything's close to China here. You don't need that one more island. And it is a real hot spot in terms of what the Chinese are thinking. Why are they doing this? What's going on? It's an escalation of what we would hope would be de-escalation in all these areas. John?
I had a story I wanted to tell you, Leanne, about the power of the military-industrial complex, but since you brought up China, I had read recently that the United States, in pursuing these wars, has run out of bullets. we've been buying our bullets from China. One of the Congress members also noted that we're so far in debt to China that if we ever want to go to war with them, we'll have to approach them first to borrow the money. But the story, as you know, I had the honor of working as a congressional staffer for Representative Cynthia McKinney. And when I was there in the last week, someone called from the office and said that a company has come and they were wrapping up the computers. And so I said, well, did they take them out of the office? And they said, no, they were coming back. So I ran in just to clear the stuff that was off the computer before they did. And I found out that the server for the congressional conveners is not Congress, it's privatized. And it's a company called Lockheed Martin. Is that a military-industrial complex enough for you?
Isn't that the truth? I mean, when you really look at the
Send your email.
The businesses, there's also another component to that. The state of Israel has special contracting privileges with the U.S. government, and part of the communications in the U.S. Capitol is done by Israeli commercial firms. So if you don't think the Israeli government knows what the Congress is doing, well, they would anyway. Ray McGovern, how are you? Give a hand to Ray McGovern.
And we haven't seen each other since the U.S. boat to Gaza.
That's right.
Yes, Hope. Just want to say a word about Colonel Wright, Deputy Ambassador Wright, Commodore and Captain Wright was my commanding officer on the U.S. boat to Gaza. What we have here is a really good example of the courageous women who have been leading our struggle here for justice, for peace, and against the military-industrial complex. Just want to say what a model, what an encouragement it is to me to have served under Captain Wright here on the boat, but also have seen her in Code Pink and in many other manifestations. Some really good news has happened with respect to how angry the Turkish premier is with the Israelis as well as the Egyptians. And I guess I'd just like to ask you, Ann, how soon are we going to be back on the boat? How soon are we going to get to Gaza so I can finally shave this beard off?
Well, I noticed that your beard you're looking a little more like Santa Claus every day. That's really growing out there. Well, indeed, the Gaza flotilla of 2011 was stalled by Israeli diplomatic maneuvering, which meant that the government of Greece refused to let 8 out of the 10 boats that were a part of this flotilla, the 8 that were in Greece, were impounded. Even though we tried to break free, we made a dash for it. We tried to escape and got about 3 miles offshore before the Greek Coast Guard and commandos came and stopped us. And our boat is still in Athens. It's still at a military dock. First we've got to get those boats released from the Greeks and get them out of there, because the heavy hand of the Israeli government toward the Greek government is certainly there and will prevent us from ever going from Greece under at least this Papandreou administration. So as soon as we can get some of the boats out and lay some plans, and the weather begins in our favor, we certainly will have another flotilla. However, the Turkish government has said that they would escort humanitarian ships. We don't want them escorting us. That's not the purpose. We don't want another military escorting us. It's a civilian initiative, and we know what these two militaries will do to each other. We don't want them escorting us. So it'll be another level of complexity with it, but we will break that blockade of Gaza.
Coming here to speak. I was having a conversation not long ago with somebody, and he was talking about how his dad groomed him to go into the military. His dad had been a career officer, wanted him to go to West Point, and he refused that, and that was a tough decision, and needless needless to say, he had a big falling out with his family, but it made me think how the military has, ingenious ways of reproducing itself, whether it's through corporate money or just a lousy economy that, where people seem to face no other option but to join the military. Many young men and women, especially living in poverty or just above poverty. So I think obviously that's a big challenge: is how do we get this monster to stop reproducing itself? Because it's, the bigger it is, the easier it is for it to do that, and especially in light of this horrible economy we're suffering through. So.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, this is one of the few jobs programs that no one has cut. The jobs program for the U.S. military continues to be fully funded. Trying to pressure to get different kinds of national service opportunities for young men and women is something I think we need to continue to work on. The military budget has such huge offerings. I mean, 20,000, 30,000 sign-up bonuses that are just unheard of. How much money a young kid whose family needs help, and all of a sudden all he has to do is sign on the dotted line, stay in for 4 to 6 years. First year, of course, in Iraq. Second year, probably Afghanistan, if he survives or she survives. It's a real situation that the military and the Congress kind of have created. Rather than saying that if there's a decision that we go to war, that everybody has to be eligible for that draft. That in itself would just end most of these conflicts. That finally the parents would be coming out and saying, not my kid's not going to go. So as much as we hate for any kids to go, if they're going to do these wars, then it should be across the board, and then let's see what the American public really thinks about whatever occupational war they're talking about. Well, with that, why don't I thank you all again so very much for supporting this tremendous conference. I look forward to talking with all of you all and being here for the course of the conference. Wonderful speakers all weekend long, so we hope that all of you will come back and be with us. Thank you.